Okay, now I'm going to go to Facebook. Where am I find that little button at?
All right, if you go down to more, right next to reactions, you go live on Facebook.
Oh, it's not there on mine. There's nothing there.
Not-
Nothing popped up.
Oops. Okay, so it doesn't do, okay, I have to make you, sorry, I
A
guess I
host. It says co-host me.
know, but I guess that's not enough. Here, make a host. Change host. There you go.
Now it comes up. Okay, now live on Facebook.
Yep.
Okay.
And then you have to follow directions because I don't have it anymore. And I'm gonna mute myself and go check it out and see where. Yesterday it just said Ajmal is live. So I think it's gonna go on yours and I'll just have to point people to your account.
Okay, going live. Now, what about this noise I'm going to hear now? What do I do then?
It says meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. You shouldn't hear any echo.
I shouldn't? Okay. Now, what about
You're good to go. You can start the meeting.
No, I hear the noise now,
It
Karen.
says meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. That's because you have,
So what do I do to, how do I get out?
you have a Facebook page open.
I hear the noise now, Karen. Close Facebook.
That's because you-
Yeah, just so so you're live right now on Ajmal's page, not.
I'm gonna link people from more to Ajmal's page and just tell them we had a snafu.
So now we're good.
Yep, you're good to go.
Oh, this is a miracle. So we're ready for the revolution. It is live. The whole world is listening to us. This is the hottest show going in town. We have Bear Alexander in the house and Riley Wilson, who's a board member. So let me give a little brief intro, and then we'll kind of go from here. We're still, I'm looking at 7:03, so we sometimes give people a little bit of time to get in, and we don't have any time limit, so we could be like Fidel Castro and talk for 6 or 8 hours if we need to. But people tell me the story, he gives those speeches, and I'm like, how can you believe people stand there for that long? But when you
like, we gotta take a break. I need a lunch break.
Yeah, no, they don't do that in Cuba. So I heard people talk about it. And I saw a couple of documentaries where he keeps them entertained. He laughs. He's just a good speaker. And obviously he was a great person for many people in that part of the world and elsewhere, I guess. So folks, I think we'll get started. People can hear what we're saying. And so we know we're being recorded. My name is Ajmal Bynum. I'm the chair of the board of MORE, Movement in Omaha for Race Equity. It's a organization is committed to anti-racism, race equity, and dealing with race issues. Riley Wilson is one of our board members and also involved in some of that. And I'm gonna let each one of y'all give a bit more introduction of yourself so that people know some of the backdrop where you're coming from. And then obviously Bear Alexander is the star of the show. We invited him. He's been on one of our programs beforehand, but we didn't do him justice. So we felt we better bring him back. And he's been in the news throwing out some heavy light, and we thought we'd bring him back to help educate the masses and go from there. Barry Alexander is a community activist and an advocate for issues impacting the African-American community. He started a group back in the day called Revolution Action Party. He participated in a panel discussion with MORE some months ago. And he's known for challenging the police department and others about the rights of people of color. He recently commented about having local post-secondary institutions proclivity for having white professors teach Black studies classes or diversity classes without having contact or input from some of the very people in our community. Many of the salient points that he shared requires a larger audience, and it requires people who are concerned about anti-racism and race equity to get involved and make these situations circles much better. I know he was involved last summer in some of the activities. He was arrested by the Omaha Police Department, and basically the judge threw the case out. It was videotaped or something. They saw that they made up a bogus lie on him. And again, I know the feeling when you get accused of something and you didn't do it. The judge like, why bother me, and throw that out. And I know Bear came out on his Facebook and elsewhere and kind of made some comments. And I reached out to him and say, hey, can you come and talk about that? And then also just talk about the criminal justice system, some of the corruption in it, law enforcement, the apartheid behavior in our community, in our state. And again, one of the things that relegate many African-American people of color to be disproportionate in our prison system. Bear, welcome to the program. Riley, welcome as a board member. We hope to have an enlightening conversation on issues of the day. And obviously, we're going to talk about the George Floyd a little bit, slip that in, because we cannot ignore that elephant on the table in this day and time as it relates to many of us in the community. So basically, I want to start off and just kind of ask both y'all, share a little bit more about yourself. I gave kind of a brief intro, but there's something else you want the listening audience or people out there in Facebook world to know about you.
Riley, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll just go real quick. So my name is Riley Wilson, board member for Moore, formerly PRI, since 2019. I'm a law student at Creighton, second year, finishing up here. Obviously, we want Bear to kind of tell a little bit about himself, but I just want to lead with a question, and then I'm going to let you kind of tell us about yourself, and then see if you can answer that for me. I met you last year during a lot of the protests that were happening over the summer, and I was serving as a legal observer, and you obviously were taking a lead role in those protests. So I introduced myself, and I just want to let you know, like, hey, I'm not here to watch you guys. I'm just here to make sure that the police are treating you with the respect that you all deserve as residents of Omaha, or residents, period. And that's how I got to know you a little bit. But what I was curious about, and of course you can start by just giving us a little bio, but can you talk to us about what it was like last summer to kind of go from a protester role, even though you're leading some of that, to actually moving into an organizer role? Because I really believe protesting has a lot more to do with reacting, where you're kind of letting things happen, and then you're moving off of that. Where organizing is more responding, right? It's like actually taking the time to take in the things that are happening, and then craft a message and actions based on the things that happen. But you're really taking the role there to make things move. So talk to us a little bit about that, how you went from a protester to an organizer over this last year.
Yeah, no, definitely. So my name is Bear Alexander. I do consider myself an organizer of sorts, an organizer for the Revolutionary Action Party. I did thrust myself into organizing and into social activism, community advocacy right after George Floyd was murdered. And after George Floyd's murder, it was like my passion was just hijacked. I was doing videography at the time, but after witnessing George Floyd's murder and then witnessing hundreds of people being tear gassed and brutalized and terrorized, hundreds of people, my constituents of Omaha, and I just felt this regretful, sinful feeling of disappointment, and like I just let myself down, I let my community down, and I honestly couldn't look at myself in the mirror, and that thrusted me into the next night, which James Scurlock was murdered. But all of this, the passion that was hijacked, I was so encapsulated by the protesting aspect that it was all happening so fast, and it was so reactionary, and it did end up, we were just rallying behind Black people's deaths. We were rallying behind Black people's death. And then once I started to do more reading and more educating, or better educating myself, especially on revolutionary theory, revolutionary organizing, and those sorts of things, I started to realize that rallying behind Black people's deaths, that's like such a minuscule thing. We need to start uplifting ourselves through Black life, and start using preventive measures and preventing these Black deaths from happening by eradicating the system that keeps on allowing these racist incidences to flourish. So that revelation kind of thrusted me into the Revolutionary Action Party's ideologies and how we move and the directions that we take. And we realized that it does start behind the scenes, and we can't just assume what the community wants. Like, prime example for our canvassing, we're going straight door to door, and we're asking 3 questions. What do you feel like is the biggest problem in your community? What do you feel like, or what do you feel is the biggest problem that's affecting you and or your household personally? And then also, do you have faith in your local government to alleviate any of these issues? So by us coming to the people, we got this from the Black Panthers, but by us coming to the people, now we finally are creating that dialogue, and we're speaking to them. Now we're giving voice to the unheard. We don't like to say voice to the voiceless, because everybody in our oppressed communities have voices. They've just been marginalized. They've just been overshadowed. They've just been held down. So we use this research and this canvassing for our demands as well. So prime example, the general consensus that we've gotten for the most part, and we've just briefly started our canvassing, was they need parents are desperately seeking for more programs for their students, for their children to be put in to divert them away from violence in the streets, which is it's indicative of what we're fighting for right now. Is we need to invest in our communities. And how are we going to invest in our communities? By taking some money from the PIG budget and then putting it back into our communities. But so yeah, just to kind of answer your question, reading more and learning more, and just reading up on different people and getting different advice from all of these different historians, these different revolutionaries, these different theorists, and implementing that into Omaha.
You know, Bear, one of the things that the Omaha Police Department was surveying Black Lives Matters and general people who are social justice people in our community. Why are they concerned with African Americans in the community merely doing civil rights? And again, we have a history where people just doing peaceful protests and they got files on them and they're following them like back in the 60s and the 70s. So why is that happening here in Omaha?
Right. I think just the and like how you kind of brought up the historical aspect of it. Historically speaking, Black people have been the number one race, the number one group that has been struggling and trying to liberate themselves from the chains of the American capitalist system for centuries. Since we have landed on, or since we have been taken from our home and brought to this country, we have been rebelling and we have been revolting and we have been trying to liberate ourselves. So our American system will do anything in their power, and they have been doing relentlessly, to keep us down in our position that they seem to justify as our natural position of our natural inferiority. So they'll do anything that they can to hinder us by reaching any type of privilege that we're trying to liberate ourselves towards. So prime example, even the smallest minuscule things of them trying to intimidate us, to deter us from coming out and speaking out against them, to the point of we'll be out at the bars and they'll come pull up by our cars and get out the cars and start flashing lights inside of our cars and checking our tags and and standing outside of our houses, pulling us over, searching our cars, all of those things that they put in place to deter us from fighting for our communities and for our rights, to be honest with you.
What is the STARS and Cahoots program that you use the example that you mentioned in other cities? I've never really heard of that. But what is that in the, you talk about that in the media. What is that? What is that?
Yeah.
What is that about?
Yeah, so Cahoots is actually in Eugene, Oregon, and Springfield, which is the neighbor to Eugene, Oregon, has adopted it as well. So and STAR program is in Denver. Pretty much, essentially, what it is a mental health response team, a low-level response team that will divert calls to the PIG department that are low-level offenses. So I'm talking some petty drugs, some vandalism, jaywalking, kids fighting in the park, mental health crisis, all of these things that should not even constitute a armed enforcer to come and solve these problems. They divert them to these mental health response teams. And Cahoots, for example, they have like around 500 hours of de-escalation training that these people go through. Cahoots, for example, in 2019, they had 24,000 calls that they responded to. And out of those 24,000 calls, they only need to call the pigs 150 times. And it just, that is extremely emblematic of how much we have allowed the carceral system and the police system to be entrenched in our communities, where we call them for literally everything, any minor inconvenience, especially to white people, any minor inconvenience that inconveniences them in their lifetime, they call the police to handle their business and to do their bidding for them. So Cahoots and STAR is a great combatant to that.
Okay.
And STAR, for example, in Denver, I'm pretty sure they were talking about how 35% of the calls that response team gets is actually from the police department. And the police department, the police chief has even said about how much he loves this program, because he has boasted about how the police don't like to respond to these low-level crimes, these low-level things. On our report for the New York, in our reporting for RAP, we got it from the New York Times, a statistic that's saying that only 4% of the crime that police are coming to are violent crimes across the country, are of actual violent crimes that are endangering the community at that present time. So these programs are just very, very small steps into defunding the police. And then once we implement these programs, and these programs in these cities have seen the success rate, the budget doesn't look as this untouchable entity, and the budget doesn't look like this untouchable force that, oh, no, we can't touch that because Chief Schmaderer, the top pig of Omaha, said there'll be unintended consequences, just this fascist threats and these fascist intimidation tactics. And now people will start to realize, dang, we just took 3 million from there, and we actually saw great success. Why don't we take another 3 million? Or why don't we take another 5 million, and why don't we invest it into the children? And then we start seeing this changing in consciousness in the masses, which I do think implementing these really small programs but very efficient programs would do in Omaha.
You know, one of the things, obviously, the elephant on the table is the George Floyd situation. What can we as African Americans or people of goodwill address public policy situation to that, so that we don't have this continuation of murders of unarmed people of color, particularly African Americans? Also, a colleague of mine in San Diego talked about a Hispanic or Latino who also was murdered by the pig, and they ended up settling, I'm thinking in San Diego, $6 million. We know about Fred Hampton, his estate, they got some money when the FBI was collaborating with the police in Chicago many years ago, and we didn't hear about that until years later. So my question is, how can we address from a public policy level that those situations don't happen as frequently? We know it's going to happen, but we want to minimize them by someone stepping on somebody's throat and even having a trial that takes that much time. It should have been decided in 5 minutes.
Right, 100%. I do try my hardest to stray away from implementing public policy, because I feel like the more I put myself into the system, the more I'm perpetuating the victimness that it causes in Black people, to be honest with you, because the system was built on top of us. It wasn't built for us. So for us to convince ourselves, to try and convince ourselves that we can work within the system to liberate ourselves, and we can work within the system to better ourselves and our lives, I feel like it is almost like is almost a fantasy. Now, we can make small concessions that may tweak minor improvements in our communities, and maybe I might see 50 less people pulled over for minor infractions, or 10% less Black people in jail for weed. But I still see I still see hundreds of Black men hundreds of Black people, unarmed people, being murdered by the pigs. I still see impoverished communities. I still see vacant lots all around my neighborhoods. I still see all this stuff. So I don't like to entertain too much of the public policy, because I feel as though it will only give us small concessions. And my main focus right now is mobilizing and organizing the masses into where we are dismantling that public policy that they're trying to have us implement. No, we're dismantling that whole structure to where we're talking about a whole different system here.
Senator McHenry mentioned in the media and on the floor the unicamera of his experience with racist cops in the city. And he talked about it even on the program we had here, how they harassed him and did some very negative things, and, you know, did some things that he can articulate and tell that happened to him. And he said it happens to other people. This is a person who was a state senator, and he talked about his experience. Even Senator Chambers talked about his experience with the Omaha Police Department. You mentioned a similar level of harassment. Please cite the example of this intimidation and this racism that you cited, that I had a chance to read bits and pieces of it involving your case.
Right. Well, honestly, to be completely honest, the first racist interaction that I had with the pig department was when they raided my house when I was 19 years old, and they were just completely disrespecting it. They were showing me my inferiority in their eyes, and that they were in charge. They were kicking their feet on my sofa, ripping up my mattress, calling me a bitch, calling me all of these degrading.
Well, hold on. You're saying the police department invaded your house and was cussing you out in your own house?
This was before my social activism. This was in 2016. So this was in 2016. And yeah, it wasn't any uniformed pigs or anything like that. It was narcotics division. And yeah, 100%. It wasn't anything. And they were making fun of my skin tone. They were calling me I think it was Samoan or Pacific Islander or something like that. And they kept on making anti-Black sentiments and anti-Black jokes and color.
We're talking about local police department officials.
Departments, 100%. Omaha police departments. They threw me in the cage, and then I tried to have my mom come pick up my dog. They threw my dog in the pound. They said, "No, we ain't giving your dog back." I almost got my dog taken away because if they did not let me sign paperwork in solitary confinement in 2016. Somebody came to my cell and gave me a paperwork to sign and said, "Here, sign this." And I was like, "What am I signing for?" And they said, "If you don't sign this, your dog's about to get taken away." I was like, how is this happening? So that was my first racist experience with the pig department. Now, fast forward to my social activism. Now I started to act. That was in 2016. Now this happens to millions of Black people on a daily basis. This complete miscarriage of enforcement, terrorization, harassment, traumatization. This happens to millions, especially this happens to millions of people that aren't even trying to liberate themselves from the community. These people are just living their everyday lives, and they're still getting downtrodden. They're still getting kicked. They're still getting smashed. They're still getting belittled and patronized. So now that I'm actually trying to liberate my community, trying to liberate myself from the chains I've been subjugated to, of course they're going to be targeting me. So my next interaction with them was at the protest on July 25th. And we were marching peacefully. Nothing was, we didn't have any evil intent in our mind or in our words and our actions. And maybe people did have some evil intent in our minds. I know I got some evil intent in my mind sometimes, a lot of times. So we were peacefully marching in these streets, and the pigs waited strategically. It was extremely strategic. They waited until we had no escape route, and they waited until we got on the Farnham Street Bridge. And as soon as everybody got on the Farnham Street Bridge, just like the farmers do to the cattle, to get them all into the cage and make sure the last one's in there, and then they close the gate. That's exactly what they did to us. And as soon as the last person stepped their foot on the bridge, they closed the back, they closed the front up, and then they started terrorizing us. To be honest with you, 2 minutes after that, they threw somebody off the bike, started pepperballing them. Then I'm on my megaphone. I'm trying to bring up the morale in people. I'm reminding everybody to get their cameras out. And I reminded everybody that this is the oppressive system trying to fight back against our resistance, trying to fight back against us peacefully marching. We are peacefully marching. I'm literally trying to bring up morale. This is a demoralizing situation. People are getting demoralized. It's almost on self-deprecation. They're feeling as though, why is this happening to me? People have never felt this before. I just came out to fight for social justice. I just came to fight for Black lives, and I'm over here getting brutalized. So I'm trying to bring up morale. I'm over here starting up chants. And then that's when they say, "Get the guy with the megaphone." And as they start approaching me, I say, "Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot." And as I'm saying, "Hands up, don't shoot," one man grabs me by the arm. The other one grabs me by the neck. The other one grabs my other arm. Then another officer comes up from about 5 feet in front of me and starts kneeing me in the rib cage. And just he's kneeing me in the rib cage, he throws me on the ground. And then at this point, this is all happening within 5-7 seconds. This is boom, boom, quick, extremely fast. As soon as they got me on the ground, they're kneeing me into the rib, they're kneeing me into the back. They don't hold their knee on my back for more than 2, 3, 4 seconds. Then they zip tie me, and then they got off. But fast forward, they tried to, or not even fast forward, that night, they got me for resisting arrest. And at that point in time, I knew there was no way that I could have been resisting arrest. There was no, it was too fast. I was subdued too quick. There was absolutely no possible way that I could have been resisting arrest. And so I knew that that was going to be, in my mind, that night, I knew that I was going to get dropped. Once I finally got the video.
Who gave you the video? Where did you get the video from?
Right. So it was, and I don't even know her name, but there was like 20, 25 different videos coming out from that night that people were just recording. I just got it from some random woman that was there.
How did you get it to the judge?
My lawyer. So I gave it to my lawyer, and my lawyer. So the pigs had the body cam footage, and their footage that they gave to the judge was the footage of the officer who was kneeing me in the rib cage. And so that so that was the footage that they used. As I go into court, but anyway, my confidence level of getting this dropped is high, is extremely high. I'm extremely optimistic about this. I feel I had done nothing wrong. Then to our lawsuit, we got all of these charges dropped, 97% of people's charges dropped. And I specifically remember my lawyer calling me, or one of the lawyers from the ACLU calling me, and he says, Bear, what did you say about Anthony Connor? I said, what? What? And I remember I did tweet. I tweeted about Anthony Connor, and I said, this was when he was in the hospital, and when he was in the ER. I said, when is Anthony Connor gonna die yet, or is Anthony Connor dead yet? And he brought up that tweet, and he said the police union are really pissed off about it. They're really pissed off about that tweet. And he was saying that the prosecution isn't the prosecution isn't that torn about it, but the police union is extremely upset about that, and they're really hell-bent about keeping your resisting arrest charge. Or having the prosecution keeping your resisting arrest charge and throwing that into the deal. So dropping 97% of the people's charges and keeping your resisting arrest charge. So I'm like, all right, whatever, cool. I have confidence in myself, in the case, that it's gonna be cool. Then my lawyer calls, my other lawyer, my Freedom Fund lawyer, he calls me and he says, I don't know, I don't want to put like blame on him, to be honest with you. He did a great job and he helped me out tremendously, but it was seeming as though he was telling me to cop to a plea deal. It was, and they were asking, they're like, you can either get resisting arrest or you can either get, I forgot.
But wait, hold on, you lost me. Are you saying the actual lawyer was doing this to you? The lawyer who's supposed to represent your interests?
So the lawyer, the ACLU lawyer came to me with saying if I was okay with this deal. And
copying the deal, copying the plea when you weren't guilty of anything.
Right. So my lawyer, my lawyer, it was almost making it seem as though he wanted me to cop to a plea because it wasn't looking too good, and that's a countless story of countless occasions all across the country of lawyer preying on people who aren't legally inept to.
Bear, hold on a quick second. I want to ask Riley something. Riley, was you there that night yourself? And you talked about it in one of our meetings. What was that like for you that night, Riley? You were actually the observer. Did you see Bear's example, or was you in that proximity?
I was probably one of the closest people to Bear. Actually, it just so happened he was on the right side of the street. I mean, if you're going west, he was on the right side of the street, and so was I. I was on the sidewalk, of course. And Bear just moved. He didn't move off the street. But he moved to the side of the street as it was directed by the police. And he did, and everything he's saying about that night, I mean, that's what I watched firsthand. In fact, after Bear was thrown down to the ground, and again, it did happen very quickly. And another one of the reasons, I think, a strong reason for why the judge may have thrown out the resisting arrest cases, because he was overwhelmed with officers. It's hard to argue that there were, I mean, however many, 5, I don't know how many, I don't know, I haven't seen the video in some time, but it was a lot of officers that came up and got him to the ground again very quickly. And I recall Bear had his glasses knocked off his face. And so once he finally got him back on, he's on the ground, he looked over, he said, man, you even got the legal observer, he didn't even do nothing.
Oh, he said that to you that night?
He said that to the police. I
Hey,
remember.
did y'all know each other before that night or
Not
no?
as well as we do now, but
Yeah,
yeah, we knew each other because I had introduced myself, prior, and so like, we were aware of each other, but we know each other better now. But I remember he looked over because he saw me zip tied, and I had my legal observer little jacket on, and he said, "Man, you got the legal observer. He didn't even do nothing." I'll always remember. I don't know if you remember that, Bear, but
Oh, I definitely. No, you definitely just reminded me that.
yeah. So that was that.
So Bear's getting his butt kicked, but he's still trying to help you out, bro. Here, let me save you. Even though I'm getting my butt kicked. Okay. That's funny. Like in the movies, y'all.
Even after he was trying to point out, he's like, what are you guys doing? You guys you were arresting someone that was on the sidewalk the whole time,
Right.
So,
Literally writing notes.
writing notes. Yeah, to the
Hey, Ryder, you had a clipboard too?
He was
Yeah.
writing notes.
I was writing notes I was writing. They pushed me to the ground, and I was writing notes up until the second that they told me to put my notes away. And so, it all happened very quick, as Bear said. But yeah, that's a really accurate, story of what happened. I was probably one of the closer people to Bear when that happened. It just so happened to be the case. But one of the things I want to ask you, Bear, just to clarify, it was the ACLU attorney who negotiated the deal to drop the other cases, and you kind of sacrificed your own case to have the prosecution not drop the resisting arrest case, and it was your freedom defense attorney that was asking you to take a plea deal. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
And I don't want to make it seem like he was preying on me like a predator attorney aspect. It was almost like he was like, it seemed like maybe he was taking the easy way out, and he didn't want to take it to trial.
Which that happens a lot in our community, particularly.
You know what I'm saying? So I don't, and he did, and I don't have any ill will towards him at all. He helped me a lot, and he represented me fine during the trial. He brought up amazing points that I didn't even think of. Like one of the points was first of all, I do want to say, when I walked into trial, I walked into a courtroom it was a courtroom full of people, and I knew that my trial wasn't the only one, so I didn't really think anything of it. And as I sit down, they call the first person up, call the second person up, and then I'm looking at my peripheral, and I see a haircut. And I'm like, oh, I recognize that haircut. That's a pig's haircut. And I look back, and it's 3 pigs in like business casual, like detective outfits. Then I look over, and then there's 2 uniformed pigs in the corner. So, and then there's two bailiffs. So I'm honestly thinking I'm about to get arrested. My confidence, how I just said my optimism was super high, my confidence was high. After I just made all of these revelations, that just depleted significantly so fast. And I honestly thought that I was about to get arrested. Then come to find out, they had called 5 pigs to testify against me, to all come in unison saying that I resisted arrest and that they needed 4 officers. They said 3 to 4. They said that they needed 4 officers to subdue me. But anyway, why I even bring that up is because one of my the lawyer, he brought up a great point. He was like, so you guys were announcing over the PA system that this was an unlawful arrest and that they were under arrest. And they're like, yeah. And he was like, okay, so when you got them on the bridge, you announced it over the PA system, right? And they're like, no, we didn't. And he was like, okay, well, when did you announce that? And they said, when was the last time you announced that? And that you're subject to arrest. And that was 12th and Howard or something like that. And so he was like, okay. And then he led officers into questions, and he was leading officers into questions. He was like, so did you hear what your officer said to the defendant? And they were like, oh no, it was too noisy. And it was too loud. It was too, and he was like, how would you describe it? And they were like, oh, it was chaotic. And he was like, so if you guys didn't even hear what your officer said, how can you expect him to even hear that he was under arrest, or he's doing this and he's doing that? You guys don't even have your PA system there on this bridge, on this crazy. So I do want to reflect that he did represent me adequately, and I don't have any ill will towards him. But it did feel as though at the beginning he did want to take the easy way out. And to further answer your question, that is kind of what it was making it seem, where they did say, And the ACLU, they came to me. They didn't say this is how it's going to go down. They specifically asked me if I was okay with this, and if I was okay with doing this, and that they were not going to go forward with this if I was not okay with that. So I have no ill will towards the ACLU as well, or nothing bad to say about the ACLU as well.
Yeah, just real quick, I just want to point out, and just so people know, if you know, when you have an attorney and they have a deal like that, it is their obligation to bring it to you and at least have it be your knowledge, right? Because had Bear been convicted, of resisting arrest, he'd have been pretty pissed if he found out later, oh wait, I had a plea deal on the table and you didn't offer it to me. So yeah, I mean, I totally get what you're saying, but it is incumbent upon him or her, whoever your attorney is, to say, this is what your options are, and then let you make the most informed decision based on what he can present to you as your attorney.
Yeah. I want to backtrack a little bit and talk a little bit more about the Chauvin or the George Floyd situation. What happened in the case yesterday, in that, do you think it will have implications or situation that will impact us here in Omaha, Nebraska? Do you think things will happen differently based upon the Minneapolis situation? I did see in the media that the Justice Department is going to investigate Minneapolis Police Department because of the two killings that happened recently. But what do you think the implications for us here in Omaha based on that situation in Minneapolis?
To be honest with you, I think absolutely nothing. If there were any implications that would be sound right now, at the absolute minimum would have been them releasing Kenneth Jones footage to the public. But they can't even do that, and they have the ability, they have the power, and they have the right to release that to the public, but they won't do that.
By the way, Bear, people don't know who Kenneth Jones, some people who are listening to this, and again, it's on Facebook, so people in other states can also, we do know we have a following elsewhere. So okay. What is the Kenneth Jones, what are we talking about here?
Kenneth Jones was a Black community member that was murdered by the Omaha Pig Department. The Omaha Pig Department came up to Kenneth Jones' vehicle. Kenneth Jones was a passenger behind in the back seat. He was a passenger in the back seat. He was murdered within 1 minute of them the pigs stepping out of their vehicles and coming up to the car. He was murdered within 1 minute. While they're doing during this, as this is transpiring, they said that he was extremely uncompliant, that he had a gun on him, and he pulled a gun out of his waist. Or they said that they said that the officer and him had their hands on the gun at the same time, and then they shot him. But I don't want to go too much into detail with that. But so the Kenneth Jones thing is extremely emblematic of Omaha and our Omaha Pig Department not showing any type of improvement based on the Derek Chauvin thing. I think it's extremely important, though, that we recognize Derek Chauvin as the sacrificial lamb that he is, and how that this empire, this fascist empire, will do anything in its power to maintain and preserve this entity that they have entrenched and ensconced into our communities. And if it means sacrificing one of their own, they'll do it in a heartbeat. They did it right there. If it means to ensure civil rest, if it means to ensure businesses safely maintaining or not burning, of course they'll do it. Of course they'll bring this. I was just telling them a story. This whole trial was them bringing this lamb, this goat, up the mountain, and the verdict, the verdict is right there. And after the verdict dropped, they just dropped Derek Chauvin and they fed him to the masses. And they expect this to satiate our dying hunger for liberation, and they expect this to satisfy us, and they expect this to silence us. And then they use Black leaders, pacified, docile Black leaders, claiming that this is justice, that this was justice served, as if we live in a world where we were literally anticipating. We witnessed this clear-cut murder, and we were anticipating a verdict. This should have been done. And I do want to point out, Revolutionary Action Party, we came out a press release and we said there's going to come a time where the people, where the masses, especially the oppressed communities, are going to realize that the system has failed us to no ends, and there's no further, or there's no going further in it. And then we're going to start retrospectively pondering on the execution of George Floyd, and then putting ourselves in the shoes of the bystanders that were watching George Floyd being executed for 9 minutes. And then we're going to start fantasizing about a brick in our hand. And we're going to start fantasizing about taking that brick and throwing it over Derek Chauvin's head. And in that possibility, and in that scenario, Derek Chauvin might not be here and George Floyd might be here. And in that circumstance, that would be the most harmonious scenario, in my opinion.
By the way, I'm gonna switch up. I'm gonna call it audible, as we say. I notice you use the word pig all the time. I know that was a very popular word with the Black Panthers and in the 60s and the 70s when you refer to police officers. And it rolls off your lip very smoothly. Why do you do that? I mean, is that inflammatory to them, or is that, give me a little bit more background why you use that word as if it's a normal word to describe police officers?
Well, I do, and that's another thing that rap, where we try and stigmatize verbiage and destigmatize verbiage, and we view words and vocabulary as a very pivotal point and a pivotal part in our society, and getting messages across. And if we can get the masses back, the community back on this pig term that was in the 60s and that was in the 70s. This is emblematic. This epitomizes who they are. This wretched swine, putrid, disgusting, repulsive, repugnant creature, faction on this earth that I wouldn't even serve to the lowest of the low. These people are epitomize this. And if we can remind the masses any chance that we get, or any chance that I get, I'll do it in a heartbeat.
You know, the reason I even raise it is that most people don't know you have freedom of speech. I mean, I know that the Supreme Court and other folks have ruled that you can cuss a police officer out and they can't arrest you. And again, freedom of speech is just that, just like burning the flag. It was our Senator Kerry who was the pivotal vote that people could burn their flags. And so I know people may find that difficult to deal with, but in the country where you have freedom of speech, and I even say freedom of thought, we should be able to engage in some of these conversations to help our people grow. And when, unfortunately, there are folks who don't have civil discourse to talk about these things because, again, they've been so literally brainwashed and have no clue of our history, our culture, and you wonder why these situations happen. Those of us who are a little bit older remember Richard Kellum, who was a guy who had scoliosis of the spine. He called I guess he got into an altercation with his niece, called the police department. Next thing you know, they took him downtown and beat him to death. The guy was a small guy. The grand jury was not in existence then, but of course there was no fault. They should have a statue for Richard Kellum. Kevin Watson was another case. There was a number of cases that we know in this community we became traumatized by, and there's been no apology, even going all the way back to the Vivian Strong. And so my point is, you wonder why people have an inherent fear of law enforcement when they have done this stuff, and there's been no recrimination, there's been no justice. And again, that plays in the head like slavery and Jim Crow and lynchings. And again, these are the kind of things we have to have the conversation on. As unpleasant as they are, you wonder why these kids have a hard time. And some people even argue it's been brought down through the genetics of their parents' experiences on these travesties, and we need to talk about it. So, but I'm going to switch up if I can. The African-American community was very disappointed in the county attorney's parade dealing with Jake Garner's grand jury. What was your perspective of that situation? Can you weigh in on that? Because it was like a travesty in how they paraded themselves out, and they were expecting something else in the way they behave. And then, of course, you had our county attorney switch parties and made that a parade. I didn't see much diversity there that day. Again, freedom of speech, so you get to say what you see and understand. But give me your insight on that, because I see it somewhat from a little bit different angle at times.
Right. I do want to point out, I think it's hilarious when the astonishment that just completely overwhelmed everybody when they found out that Don Klein was a Democrat to begin with. No, no, I didn't know that he was there. I completely assumed that he was a Republican. So when he said, "I'm going to the Republican Party," I said, "When did you leave?" But that is also emblematic of Dixiecrat and these racist.
That's also what Malcolm X would say.
And these racist Democrats that have no social justice bone in their body, and it is all for their party affiliation serves them best and fits their mold best, and it benefits them best in whatever thing that they do, whatever profession, whatever life hobby, whatever. And that's how I feel with Don Klein, and he was just so easy to switch up. When people called him can you imagine that people calling you racist and you move to the Republican Party? It's almost like like, oh, I'm a racist. All right, let me show you something real quick. Hold my beer real quick. So
Hey man, you ain't supposed to make the host laugh. I'm supposed to be very serious and sober and looking like I'm like, man, you can't be making me laugh in front of millions of people watching this show. You're gonna mess up my image. I'm supposed to be the serious moderator host here. Come on now.
Okay. with the Jake Gardner thing, I think that, okay, so we were, to be honest with you, I had no faith in the grand jury. We were ready to come out. We were ready to mobilize. We were ready to exclaim our exasperation. We had 50 people set up. We were planning on going out to 72nd and Dodge. We had 50 people set up in Dundee, and we were all outside watching on our phones, awaiting this trial. We had all the flyers made. We had all the Facebook events made. All we had to do, like the nuclear button, all we had to do was hit send, and everything was going to go off. And we were just anxiously anticipating for this not guilty verdict. And then guilty. And then it felt as though, like, it legitimately felt like a monkey was left off my back. A monkey was left off my back. And I felt a sigh of relief. I felt a sigh of excitement. I at that point in time, I did see that it was just a small step. This is still not justice in any way, shape, or form. The fact that we're even fighting for this shows exactly where we're at in our community. It shows where we're at in our system, in our society, all that stuff. We should be arguing as to why we're even in this predicament to begin with. But I have some controversial views on the conclusion, and my conclusion. And I do come from a place of privilege, and I give all my commitments and all my respect and all my appreciation to the Scurlock family. I can only imagine what they went through, and so my place, in my opinion, is coming from a more privileged position because I'm not in their shoes. I'm completely on the outside box. I'm looking at it as one less racist in a white supremacist society is a win in people of color and in this country, in my books. If we can get every racist out this country, in my opinion, this country would be better. If every racist decide to off themselves, this country would be better, in my opinion. And Jake Gardner does not stray away from that. In my opinion, I think that with our judicial system and with how corrupt Nebraska is. Nebraska, I do want to point out, Nebraska is 5% Black people. We make up 50% of the incarcerated population. This state does not give a damn about us. They do not care about our Black ass whatsoever. So for us to expect this system to carry out justice and to carry out a substantial, significant amount of justice is asinine. So I really did truly believe that the most this man would have gotten, absolute most, and I think that this is reasonable, that a lot of people would agree with this, 20 years on the books, on the docks, 25 years on the docks, half of that 12 years. Is that justice? Like, do we honestly think if that was the predicament?
And here's a question I'll raise, and I think it's an issue we got to look at. Number one, disproportionality. When you have 5% of the population making up a disproportionate number, how do you have that conversation, and do you even examine the numbers? I do know sometimes people want to ignore the numbers, sweep them under the rug. So that's number one. Why? And I think Angela Davis alluded to that in her arguments, and she said abolish prison. It's a cottage industry. You look at some of these child welfare organizations, they snatch these kids out of their homes, and then they end up returning them within a few months and make the parents or the guardian, whoever, go through some hoops over something that they should have never taken them away, because you traumatize kids when you take them away from the family. You got all kinds of people making money off of people of color, but yet they're not going upstream dealing with the causation of it. But my question, going back to a point that I'm trying to drive, can we really abolish prison? And another thing is, you spent some time in prison. Now, again, that's kind of a sensitive area. I don't know anything about it, Jeff. I just saw you alluded to that. Can you talk about that and the concept of abolishing prison? What does that really mean? Lou, using Angela Davis paradigm.
Right. So I did go to prison for an F2A felony, which is 0 to 20. And I got it for manufacturing marijuana. and I
Wait,
got caught.
wait, hold it. You went to prison when people making millions and billions off over some marijuana? You making this up, bro.
And I still can't own a gun. I still can't own a gun.
Wait. We talking about a victimless crime marijuana in Nebraska, and you go a few hundred miles over to Colorado and you'll be a billionaire almost.
It's great that you bring that up, because as as I'm in prison, they forced me to take these restorative justice classes, which I will say I didn't know what restorative justice was.
Wait, hold on. Well, you gotta help me out because I'm kind of not the sharpest blade sometime. How do you do restorative justice for marijuana?
Exactly, and that's my point. They forced me to take these restorative justice classes, and I'm grateful because it segued me into learning or wanting to learn more about restorative justice. But they created this self-deprecating process in my mind, because they were legitimately saying that my crime was not victimless whatsoever, that it was by far 100% not victimless, that by my house getting raided, that lost a sense of security in my neighbors' minds, and my neighbors' minds.
And so they wouldn't talk to your neighbors and ask them that they were lost of security over some marijuana?
Exactly. And then they said, financially speaking, since I cost money to be housed in prison, that financially I just caused the community. I caused the community financial worries, because now they have to pay $50,000 a year to house my black ass. So that was the thoughts that they were really trying to implant in my mind. So I will say that, to be honest with you, to not even really go too much into detail about my life, I was really addicted to drugs. I was not in a good place before I went to prison, and I was going to college. I was a junior, or I was starting my junior year in college, and but I was just fighting these demons, and I was not in a good place. And prison really did kick me into gear. I met people I met lifers. I literally met people that were in there since they were in there since the 70s. Dude was in there for a double murder since 72, in there for life, and just talking to this person. I was only in there for 18 to 24, or my sentence was 18 to 24 months. I was in there for, and I split that up in 4 months and 8 months. So I wasn't even in there for a whole year. And I'm talking to these people. I met this 18-year-old, literally got 50 years. This other 18-year-old, Hispanic 18-year-old, nicest kid in the whole entire world. You would not know, he would not hurt a fly. His friend hit him up. This is a quick story. His friend hit him up, told him, hey, we're gonna go do something real quick. I need you to drive the car. He didn't even know what they were doing at the time, but he just needed to drive the car. So they go over to this head shop in South Omaha. He's driving the car. He doesn't get out the vehicle at all. His friend goes into the head shop. His friend robs the head shop. The head shop owner shoots his friend, kills his friend. My friend, the kid I met in prison, he's still in the car. He hears the gunshots. He freaks out and he leaves. They come and pick him up 5 days later, charge him with his friend's murder, and now he's in prison for 50 years. This 18-year-old Hispanic boy. He was in there for 50 years, and all he did, and the store owner was not even harmed, was not anything, that nothing was harmed except for his best friend that was just murdered. And now they charged him with his best friend's murder. Now he's still in there. He's in OCC right now for about another 20 years. So to segue into abolishing the prison system, that's imperative. It's almost it's 2021, and the fact that some people aren't even entertaining the idea shows how entrenched our punitive system is, and how we truly feel that everything in our life, societal, or speaking on society, that all of our problems will be solved by incarceration or the threat of punishment. And so we live this every day, and this goes into what I was talking about, how we use every minor inconvenience as calling the pigs. And what's really stressful, and what we really need to emphasize, is the journey to abolition is what everybody should latch onto. The fact that we are preaching to people, we want to live in a society where we don't need prisons. Wouldn't you want to fight for that? Wouldn't you want to fight for a society where you don't even need mass amounts of prisons. There's no stocks in prisons. There's no private prisons. Wouldn't you want a society that doesn't need police officers? We're not talking about a society that doesn't have officers. We're talking about a society that doesn't need officers, and putting preventive plans and preventive measures and community programs and all of these things in place to ensure our safety and our happiness and our liberty. And so I feel like in 2021, also, I do take blame. And I feel like every organizer and every radical and every revolutionary and every leftist or every abolitionist should take blame in the current status of the stigmatization of abolition. We need to be doing more work. We need to be educating the people more. We need to be getting this word across. The people need to know the solutions, the tactics, the strategies, how we're going to get there, what we're going to do it, the programs that we're going to put in place to substitute it. They need to see the blueprint, and it's up to us to create it. It's up to us to put it down so people can latch onto it. And if it's dying in the community, and we're the organizers and we're the ones supposed to be educating, then yeah, no, we're doing a huge disservice.
Bear, one of the things I want to throw out is that I remember years ago where there was a number of white guys were fighting on a roof somewhere, and one of the guys pulled out a knife and stabbed one of the other young white guys. They were young people, and I remember the one guy went to prison for 1 year. And one of the things that I've discovered in our society and in our community and in our country is there's a great disparities in who gets to go to prison, how long you get to go. There was a case when I was at Promise Ship where there was a white woman who had a black kid. She was a foster parent. She slept with the kid. I guess they had a relationship. I heard from different sources, even before the case was even decided, because she had connections, she wasn't going to spend a night in jail or prison. And so again, I know things happen. I know some things are bad, but our system is so arbitrary on how people get justice, and also depending upon how you plead bargain, how you got a good attorney. But it's one of those things. There's not a lot of data coming out from our criminal justice departments, our school systems, to show that many of these racialized situations, let's use the concept they call reverse engineering. So if you got 45 or 35% of the population of color in there, something is wrong somewhere. If you are buying the notion that people are smoking the same amount of marijuana or maybe having a certain amount of violence, or you may even say there's more violence in the low income areas, and so you'll see some of that. But my point is, why would you give an 18-year-old or 16-year-old all those years in prison when you know there's brain development issues? And again, I'm not going to be, I'm not in favor of the death penalty. I've changed over the years. But what bothers me is when you see the arbitrary system that we exist. I'm going to switch up and ask you a point, Riley, because I think it's all related to this. How do you avoid not buying into norms or the status quo of the prison or the jail system or law enforcement? What is it, Riley, that takes the average person to make this switch up that Bear is talking about? Because at some point in circles, it's difficult to get some people to understand, but what is the point you would see, Riley, that would help people reconsider some of these arguments that more buildings of prisons of 230 million is not going to always solve our conditions?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my journey is probably similar to a lot of people's. And, I've started to say abolition begins in the heart. That's where abolition begins. You have to have the heart to want to help people and to say that this is not the way. This is not the way. Putting armed people into historically marginalized communities and having them there 24/7 as a constant presence and treating it like they are in a war zone is not the way. Putting humans in cages in calling it rehabilitation is not the way. We can do better than this. And so for me, I think it probably, and maybe there's a lot of people, and I can't speak for everyone, but a lot of people think we can reform the police, right? And I think a lot of people start there at some point in their lives, whether they're 16 or whenever they recognize there's a problem with policing, right? They say, well, maybe if we change, maybe if we do more, maybe if the cop has more education, maybe that'll do it. maybe if we just give them more hours of training, that'll do it. Oh, wait, no, maybe if we just hire different people to do. And at some point you just take a step back and go, they keep trying these things and it doesn't work. And then it makes you finally realize, like, maybe the tree is poison. And so all the apples that come off of the tree are bad apples. And so you can, there might be individuals that get into policing because they think that it's the right thing, but then you've taken a good person and you put them into a bad system. And what do you think is going to happen? They're now part of the problem. And that's the reality of it, right? So I think it's really important that when we're thinking about the PIC, the prison industrial complex, which involves policing, the prison system, and surveillance, government surveillance. When we're thinking about this, we need to recognize that if this could have been fixed, it would have been fixed already. But it has not been, because it's not intended to. This was not a system that was intended to be beneficial to Black people. It's a system that inherently is racist because it was founded and created as slave patrols in the protection of the capitalist system. So if we're not talking about that, we're never going to get anywhere. So I think for a lot of white people, there's this idea of, well, if I don't have police, what's going to happen to my family and my house? And that's an implicit racism that they're going to have to confront, because what that means is that you think that the other people are going to come to your house and harm you and your family. And if you can't recognize that, and you don't understand that racism going on in your head because you think those people are going to come into your house and hurt your family, you got bigger problems, right? You're part of the I'm a good person, but you're actually racist. That is part of the problem. You're part of the people that Dr. King talked about from a jail cell in Birmingham. So that's one of the things that I think there needs to be some self-reflection. And eventually you might get to a point and say, I want better for my community, and I want better for historically marginalized communities, because they don't deserve to live in fear like that. I want to ask Bear real quick, if you're okay, Ajamal. I just want to
No, I'm not okay. This is my show. You just shut up and watch me in action. I'm the master facilitator. No, I'm just joking. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say something to him earlier. You mentioned, the restorative justice that they said happened with you being in prison, and that you needed to pay back the community because it costs money to house you there. I want everyone to remember that Huey Newton, co-founder of the Black Panther Party, he was in prison in California, and he said, I don't want the taxpayers to pay for my imprisonment. I demand that you give me a well-paying job so I can work to pay for my own jail cell and my food, and they refused him that. So again, this has never, ever been about the money. It's never been about the money. Don't let him fool you about that, because even when he said, I will pay for my own imprisonment, they didn't let him. So, but the question I want to get to, Bear, for you is, Mariame Kaba, abolitionist that is living today, has a great book people should go out and buy. Mariame Kaba has that line, which is, let this radicalize you and not lead you to despair. And I think that's really great. And I think it speaks to kind of the moment that we're in, where people get so angry and upset and frustrated and they don't know what to do. And I think that's the answer. Let this radicalize you rather than lead you to despair. Despair is not the answer. We can do more. So tell people, from your perspective as a lead organizer with RAP, like, what can people do who see themselves kind of getting frustrated or being led to despair? What can they do to be radicalized in love in the best way possible for our community, in ways that are beneficial to our community? What can they do to kind of go from that despair to a way that they're being helpful to their community in the way that you've done?
Yeah. So I'll kind of answer your question, but then answer another question as well, but they correlate. How I would approach the organizing aspect on getting people privy and hip to abolition and getting people to jive with it is we reveal the repression. And by revealing the repression, we cause agitation, and that agitation thrusts the radicalization. So the great point is the Black Panthers. Everybody in the Black Panthers knew what the pigs were capable of. They knew the stronghold, and they knew the merciless tactics that they would use, and they knew the repression that they were capable of inflicting. Most of America didn't know that. Most of America didn't see that. And when most of America would see this assault on the Panthers, they justify it by the propaganda that our system will put out, saying, "Oh no, they're militant. They deserve this. Repression." So the thing is that we need to emphasize is, how can we show the masses that repression, and how can we have them feel that repression that the pigs are capable of? And once we reveal that repression, nobody likes repression at all. Repression causes agitation. I could go further into, Malcolm X always said, the Black community is suffering peacefully, and Eldridge Cleaver said that we're suffering in the state of Novocaine. We're complicit. But to answer your question, Riley, as to why or how you can thrust yourself farther into the radicalization is education. Education is the biggest thing. I think reading, and if reading ain't your thing, I get it. Like when I said that I was a junior in college, I was going in to be a teacher. So I understand completely as to the different learning aspects, the different types of learners. Not everybody can read some watch some documentaries. There are plenty of documentaries that'll thrust you into radicalization. There's plenty of books that'll thrust you into radicalization. There's plenty of PDFs, audio books. It is 2021. It is so accessible now to get your hands on education to radicalize you and to revolutionize you. And I feel like you just have to have that will to do that. Now, also, you can hit me up as well if you want any book recommendations. I got you. I know that that in itself does get overwhelming when it's like, okay, well, I want to learn about communism, but what do I read? Because I've read the Communist Manifesto. Now what do I read? What would be a good book to start out with? And so I feel like if you can find people that can advise you on that path, that would be great. But once again, it's 2021. You can look that up, and there are plenty of Reddit docs. There's plenty of Yahoo answers where people are asking the exact same question that you are asking right now, and you will find solace and solidarity in that through Google.
Bear, we only have so much time left. We're getting close to the end, but there's a couple of questions I want to throw out before we leave. What is your implementation plan for achieving an anti-racial society, anti-racist society? And can we do that one city at a time? Part of our group and our organization is about anti-racism, race equity. So from your vantage point, how can we address that?
We have to dismantle capitalism. That's the 100 thing. We can have no true liberation. We can have no true liberation within our Black community, brown community, LGBTQ community, racism, sexism, imperialism. All of these things cannot be eradicated fully under our current capitalist system. So we have to eradicate that. We have to dismantle capitalism by any means necessary. What was the second part of your question?
Switch up. Some people asked a question about the curriculum. Again, there was some protests by some students at Central High a while back. There's some issues about how students can get more involved, not only in high school, but even at the university level. I was recently seeing something from the Multicultural Affairs of Illinois. It was talking about some food tasting events versus dealing with some real issues in our community. How do we get the curriculum, or how do we transform students from your vantage point? Obviously, you went and got an education in different places, took you to a different level, but how can we help that happen for other people who will go through our formal educational system?
Yeah, and that's actually a demand for the Revolutionary Action Party. Our fourth philosophy is we believe that there needs to be a complete restoration in our education system, because we feel as though it vilifies historical figures of color, it ensures an obsequious state of mind, and it also completely overshadows any type of strides, milestones, points of unity in historical moments in Black and brown and marginalized communities across the country. How one of our demands is forcing facing history into our curriculum. And facing history is to quick run off on it. It's this organization that will come, they have textbooks, they have curriculum, and it's pretty much you adopt their curriculum of social studies and English. And this curriculum they have based off of not vilifying, not demonizing American history, but telling the full-on truth about civic engagement, about Jim Crow, there was actually a study coming out about around a whole, I don't even want to give a certain percentage because I don't have it on top of my head, but how a plethora of schools, middle schools, weren't even talking about Jim Crow. And so all of these things that we're completely overshadowing, facing history doesn't. Facing history brings these up, brings up civic engagement. It spotlights civic engagement as well, which I think is huge. And then we start to see that generational change, that this will literally be or 15-year study plan. So if we implement facing history across these cities, we'll see 15 years down the line the decrease in hate crimes, the decrease in right-wing militias, the decrease in right-wing organization, all of these things. You can see the positive effects from implementing these curriculums into our schools.
Right. You know, one thing, how can somebody catch up with you if they want to join the movement? I know you have an organization you work with, but what is your contact information? How can we let people know that? Do we just call your name out, Bear Alexander, and the mailman?
Bear.
They know how to catch up with you, but how can people catch up with you?
Yeah, so we got a rap house right now, the Revolutionary Action Party house. It's on 2411 Emmett Street, 24 right off 24th and Emmett, right across from Lothrop Elementary. We are open to the public. We have our clothing pantry there. Our food program is about to start in 2 weeks.
Okay.
We are about to get a recording studio donated to us to have up in there as well. We have a study room for if you need to do homework, if you need to read, do whatever. We have a game room as well up at the rap house. We have, like I said, our clothing pantry as well. So the rap house members are always chilling here. We're always here, and it's also open to the community. So anybody can come if you want to get hip to what we're talking about. If you need some food or if you need some clothes, you can just come to the rap house. Or if you need to come play some games, or if you want to come chill out, do whatever, come to the rap house. If you want to learn about some new economic liberation, come to the rap house.
Right.
If you want to follow us on any type of social media, Revolutionary Action Party. You could follow me on any type of social media as well, and like message me, to be real with you, and I'll message you back. I'm very responsive, and my name is Bear Alexander on all them.
Good. Before I leave, I want to give a shout out to Riley Wilson, who's also one of our board members. We're at the very end, Riley. I want to give you a chance to say some closing comments or say something that you want to say, because again, after this is over, then we won't be able to do this again tonight. So any last parting remarks, Riley, from your point?
Well, I just know when you were in touch with Bear about having him on, I wanted to just jump in here because I really admire Bear and the work he's doing, and it's so important right now, especially in this moment. And there's just a lot of people that they don't like what they see happening in this country or in the city, and they might not know where to start, and they don't know where to go. And to know that, you know, Bear is making it very clear that there is an organization in Omaha that wants to welcome you. And if you're upset with the way things are going and you're not happy with the way you see the Omaha Pig Department treating so many of our residents, that there's a place for you here to say, you know, we're going to invest in our community the way that we know that the city should, but isn't doing right now. So yeah, so I'm just happy to be here. Please follow Bear and Rap on social media. If you're watching this on social media, obviously use it. They're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, so all your main ones. They are responsive, and get involved.
Bear, we throw the last word out to you as a guest. What is it you like to leave our partying audience with?
So I do want to stress 100% that you have okay, I want to be careful. Okay, so I do want to stress 100% that we have to be completely cognizant of working within our system. We can take small concessions, and we can insert ourselves into our system only dipping our toes in it. Prime example, we relieve immediate, or prime example, we're starting a $15 minimum wage campaign in a couple months to get put on our ballot for next November. That in itself is working within the system, but we recognize that this will alleviate an immediate need, an immediate concern in the masses right now, in the process of abolition, in the process of dismantling, in the process of eradication. When George Washington was elected president, only 6% of people, 6% of Americans were allowed to vote. This system was literally made to exclude people. This system was made on the exclusionary process. we cannot expect liberation within our system, and anybody who's telling you otherwise is being a pawn in a system. Kwame Ture said it best that our political system kidnaps our greatest grassroots organizers, and it kidnaps them from the masses, and then it muzzles them, and then it strangles them and constricts them and restricts them, and does not allow them to do any real substantial work that they would have been doing outside of fighting against the system.
Good.
So I do want to stress that we need to radicalize, we need to revolutionize, we need to mobilize, and we need to organize. And we cannot expect. I really want to stress this. Can you imagine a slave going to the master and asking for his freedom, saying, "Please, master, can I have my freedom? I really like to morally compromise with you. I've been working for 20 hours now. I don't know if this moral compromising is going to work." We cannot morally compromise with these people. In order for you to morally compromise with somebody, that person has to have a conscience. And our judicial system, our oppressive system, has proven time and time again that they are not even capable of having a conscience with the complete atrocities that they inflict every single day, not only on Americans but of people all across this world, predominantly Black and brown. So yeah, I do just want to stress that 100%, that the revolution, I do want to end where you started. The revolution will be televised this time. We'll make sure of it 100%.
Well, Riley Wilson and Bear Alexander, really appreciate y'all doing this. We have to do more of this. As a proponent of decent and open media, 3 points I'll make. Number one, our Nebraska Educational Television, the radio and public television, does a very piss poor job of letting people of color participate. I think in the history of educational television, they've only had one African American on their commission, and we pay tax for that. That's right, number one. Number two, there are so many diamonds in the rough in our community and in our society, and we have to do a better job of lifting folks up and, again, passing it on from the old to the young. And again, we tend to forget that it's the older who often have a lot of repository of knowledge, and we need to be conscious of that. And I think the other fine point I want to make is more omaha.org. We're hoping to bring more conversations like this of people who are not brought in for those sound bites in our local media, and to talk more about how we can deconstruct and deal with racism, because the situation of George Floyd and elsewhere is only a drop of water in the iceberg of, as I say, the water in the ocean of all the things that have happened. So we really hope that you've enjoyed this edition, and we hope that you join us again for another edition. We talk more about anti-racism, race equity in our community and in our society. And on that note, we will end with our common phrase, Baroko, and may the force be with you. Thank you.
And now you can turn off the recording.
You see my producers in there taking care of business here, y'all, for me? We're going to become movie stars here, y'all. This thing is going across. I got sisters down in Houston tracking this. They say, I got to, how do you say? Oh,
There's a button